And we're getting ready here. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, this is episode 8 of Dystopia Media. Got to just make sure real quick that we're on in the places that we should be broadcasting. You should be seeing us on YouTube at the Dystopia Media channel, and you should be seeing us on our Dystopia Media Facebook page. But I'm checking there and I am not seeing. There we go. There we go. And I'm going to share this around a little bit and give people a chance to join. It's a very important topic today because I believe there's plenty of evidence to support my opinion that the media, bias, lies, and censorship are causing the deadly riots. And we've got a short period of time possibly to diffuse the type of riots that could be coming along, this this week with the Minneapolis trial that's going on. The whole thing is, the left, what they're doing is they've got a very insidious weapon that we're going to talk about in this podcast. They like to accuse people of saying things that invoke violence from people when they themselves are the ones invoking the violence through what they say and their lies. And the people that are making these lies are big media corporations and social media corporations and censorship. One of the types of lies that's at play here is the omission lie, where you don't tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, like we talk about in our courtrooms, and we used to teach every American child. Well, that's the way it used to be in America. Now we got a whole different situation where we're getting a lot of omission lies from the powers that be, and they're not telling the whole truth, and it's causing riots. I think a lot of these riots and the harm and things that would happen out there could be diffused if the American public were simply told both sides of the story. Okay, but what's happening is prejudice. We are dealing with prejudice, prejudgment in the media, and it's not the media's job to go and determine the outcome of what the courts are going to do. I tell you, the courts are imperfect places, but it's where justice is pursued. We have one of the best systems in the world as far as getting justice compared to many, many other nations. And we've got a situation where grand juries try to do a good job, and we're having trouble getting that because instead of rule of law in America, we now have mob rule in America. And that's what's at stake this week. We're going to find out. I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but even Fox News has weighed in. And I want to make it very clear, whether it's CNN or Fox News, as you can see here on your screen, Greg Jarrett, writing for Fox, says that Derek Chauvin prosecutors meet the burden of proof in trial. And listen, the bias in this is just so, it sticks right out. It says, defending the indefensible can be a futile and fatuous endeavor. It's just so in the case of the murder trial of Derek Chauvin, who exercised his Fifth Amendment right, da 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 da. So Fox News is prejudging. Okay, Greg Jarrett and Fox News, it's not their job to prejudge what's going to happen in this case. Neither is it CNN or Facebook or anyone else's. But here they are. They're creating the expectation that Chauvin should be found guilty because everybody saw the video of George Floyd under Chauvin's knee. And, I saw it too, and I hated it. And I wanted him to get his knee off of George Floyd and for him to get the medical treatment he needed. But now that we're learning more in court about what was going on with George Floyd, there's things in there, that it looks like George Floyd had a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. Carbon monoxide was coming in his system from the car. He had COVID-19. He had heart disease. All these different things were happening that have more explanation to what we were seeing in the video. So these judgments need to be withheld for court. So appreciate everybody that's watching right now. If you could, please share this broadcast with others and comment in the comment stream so we can answer your questions while we're moving forward here. How do we know that the media is probably getting it right, including Fox, wrong, shall we say, with the George Floyd case? Well, look at everything else they got wrong. They got it wrong on the Duke lacrosse team. They got it wrong on George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin story. They got it wrong on the Jussie Smollett story. They got it wrong on the Michael Brown hands up, don't shoot story. They got it wrong on the Covington High School boys story. Every time something involving race comes up, the media gets it wrong. And we know from what we've heard from people inside of the media and some of the stuff coming out like Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, if you're not supporting those guys, please do already. We know that a lot of it's intentional. Let's talk about one of the things, let's just give another example of it. Because we're all on riot watch. I've polled a lot of people, and a lot of people feel like there's going to be riots, whether Officer Chauvin is found guilty or not. But the expectation is very high that there will be wide-scale riots if Chauvin is found not guilty or of murder. And for those of us who have been reading along the case and watching the case, I think there's a pretty good chance of that. Think about the jury pressure, though. They got a biased judge, they got a biased situation. The jury was not sequestered, and think of those jurors sitting in there. Let's say that you're on the jury for the Chauvin trial, and you think that there's a reasonable doubt to the prosecution's case. Well, you know that the building you're in is surrounded by tens of thousands of people who are all going to wish you bodily harm or to murder you, that the police can't stop if you hang that jury or vote to convict. So there's a mob rule pressure being exerted and cheerled by the American media, including this, Fox News thing here. And so what happens? Let's say the media, that the evidence did show that there was reasonable doubt about Chauvin being guilty of murder. But the jurors go ahead and rule with the prosecution to avoid ruining their own lives and having to go into hiding or maybe not being able to get out of the building or the community alive. At that moment, in that space and time, mob rule dominates the rule of law. And countries people are trying to get out of, like Mexico and Guatemala, that's where mob rule dominates the rule of law. Here in the United States, at least until recently, when the media started egging on these riots and rioters, the United States was a place where rule of law triumphed over mob rule. And that's why everybody wants to come here, because despite our many flaws, it's one of the best court systems on the planet, and you're safer here than many, many other places. But let's take a little look here.
CNN's Omar Jimenez.
Let me get let's put up some evidence here of what I mean by the media encouraging and glorifying riots. Here is a little clip from CNN. And of course, this is fair use, everybody. I'm using these clips in fair use, and I will include the links to all of the videos that'll be posted after the podcast for you to go back and review them in their entirety. But let's take a little look at this clip from CNN.
CNN's Omar Jimenez is on the ground for us in Kenosha.
Christine, Laura, what you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations.
Now, here's the part that got everybody angry. Look at the title here. They're going live to Kenosha, where things are on fire in the background and people are wandering in the streets, and with Omar Jimenez, and it says fiery but mostly peaceful protest after police shooting. It's fiery but mostly peaceful.
That have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the course of the night. A second night since Jacob Blake was seen shot in the back 7 times by a police officer. And
Jacob Blake, who was going into a vehicle despite officers' orders with their weapons drawn while they were there for a felony arrest with 2 children in the car that weren't his. And there's nobody on TV explaining things. There's people on YouTube like Officer Tatum and other people that are explaining what's really going on from a law enforcement perspective with these things, but they've taken that away. They've also taken away shows that one of the most popular shows on TV, Live PD, was one of the most popular shows on cable television, and the show Cops, which is one of the longest running shows on television. They took them both away. And the reason they took both those shows away is because they showed things from the officer's perspective, and they were such good shows because they helped educate people on how our police function, how our law system functions. And you're not getting any of that. You're getting a little bit of that on Fox News. You'll get brief mentions of it sometimes on CNN, but when I say that CNN is biased, it doesn't mean they never tell people this other information. It just means that they tell another story and they keep pushing it. And here you can see the video of the fiery but mostly peaceful protest. Now, 2 things I want to say about protests real quick here as we are discussing these. One, okay, the media could diffuse these riots and protests by doing 2 things. One, Tell everybody what the prosecution and the defense both are really saying in these cases. Withhold prejudice, pre-judgment, the word prejudice, pre before, and judge for judiciousness. Withhold the prejudgment. Make it in our society a deplorable, awful, terrible thing that we all agree stinks for Fox News, CNN, or anybody else to prejudge these trials like they did wrongfully with Jussie Smollett, the Covington High School boys, the Duke lacrosse team, George Zimmerman. They constantly do this. And as soon as it gets proven that racism wasn't the cause, they move on to the next false narrative. And it's them. It is the media and the left using a weaponized, I call it political projection. The term psychological projection, if you'll look it up, it's a psychology term where a person projects their fears and concerns about themselves on someone else. Political projection, as I'm calling it, is a weapon by which the left predominantly, maybe others, accuse people of saying things that will cause violence or telling lies that will cause violence when they are the ones who are telling lies that are causing the violence, including omission lies that they're leaving out and the censorship that we're seeing applied not only by the mainstream media. Mainstream media has been censoring people for decades. Now we've got new social media that are stopping good people from broadcasting on YouTube, conveying their opinions and messages on Twitter and the Google search engine. And don't forget, Facebook, timeout, jail, all this stuff. This is creating an imbalance in information that leads to people in the streets who have the mistaken about it. Now, quick point. I don't know what's going to happen when the verdict comes down. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what the future holds. If it did, I would be on my yacht right now, trading my stocks instead of talking to you. But here's the thing. All across the country, we have far less police officers now than we had a year ago when things originally burned over George Floyd. Okay. Please listen to what I am saying. Okay. A year ago, we had more police. In North Carolina, Central North Carolina, give an example. The capital of North Carolina is Raleigh, North Carolina, and the Raleigh Police Department is short 70 police positions they can't fill. They can't find anybody who wants to do the job. Nearby city of Durham, 60 police positions they can't fill. Okay. The Wake County, the Wake County Sheriff's Department is down. They got a woke Democrat sheriff in Wake County now, and he's down 22 officers in spots that he can't fill because nobody, a lot of people don't want to do this job. The police are not feeling backed up. They're probably feeling like they can't get a fair trial. They know they can't get a fair shake in the media, and that they feel like they can't get a fair trial. And everybody needs to think about that, because if we don't have the police, there's nobody between the good people in this country, the vast majority of people of all races who are good people, white, black, Hispanic, male, female, gay, straight, are great folks. But those bad people out there who will steal, take, rob, rape, murder for their, for their furtherment or whatever, there's nothing between us and them if the police keep deteriorating. And whatever is and will not happen this week, keep in mind it's going to be happening on a landscape of reduced police officer presence. And if Chauvin is found not guilty or the jury hangs or whatever, the main targets out there are going to be police. And the secondary targets will be anybody that the mob thinks looks like a Trump voter. And that would mean anybody who looks like a Republican or a Caucasian or whatnot, walking down the street in the wrong place, wrong time, with the wrong people, the wrong impression. And whoop, there it is. That's why gun sales all across the country are through the roof. But let's look at how the media gets it wrong here. Let's look at something. You'll see in the contemporary protests, you'll see people still putting their hands up. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Well, that's a lie. Their movement is based on many lies. BLM and Antifa are violent groups that are based on lies, including the hands up, don't shoot thing, which is false. The media told everybody the false allegations that Michael Brown was executed by a police officer on his, down on his knees, begging for his life with his hands up. Well, it turns out that we found out that didn't happen. The grand jury did its work. People did it. Just take a look at this. We know that hands up, don't shoot didn't happen, but you're going to see people this week and next week marching around in Minneapolis and Ferguson, Chicago, and DC with their hands up, don't shoot. And that's because nobody in the media has gone back and told them the truth that that's a big lie. Check this out.
It is the mantra of a movement started in Ferguson, Missouri, after the shooting of unarmed black teenager Michael Brown by white police officer Darren Wilson. Hands up, don't shoot spread across America like wildfire, from Ferguson to New York to Los Angeles. Hands up, don't shoot! To the halls of Congress, to the NFL football field, even CNN contributors throwing up their hands. There's only one problem.
It's no good. It's not true. It is either based on a lie or based on a misinterpretation of what happened.
Federal and local authorities say the evidence shows hands up, don't shoot didn't happen. The final Department of Justice report concludes Michael Brown's hands were not up in surrender when he was shot and killed by Officer Wilson. So where did it come from? Brown's friend the day of the shooting.
His weapon was already drawn when he got out the car. He shot again, and once my friend felt that shot, he turned around and he put his hands in the air, and he started to get down, but the officer still approached with his weapon drawn, and he fired several more shots.
Now, that comment you just heard was from Michael Brown's friend who was there, okay, when the action happened. But the reason that the grand jury determined that hands up, don't shoot didn't happen was that everybody else they talked to, almost all of the people, or the great majority of the people who claimed that Michael Brown's put his hands up and was executed or whatnot, were determined to not been able to see what happened because they were not there. They were somewhere else when the shooting occurred. The people who were there and could be proven there are verified to be in the vicinity as an eyewitness. And these are people who were supposed to be eyewitnesses who told the FBI things that I'll show you in a minute. They admitted that were lies. All the people that weren't there said, oh, yeah, he had his hands up. And the people who were there said, no, he didn't have his hands up. He was charging at the officer when the officer fired. So let's watch a little bit more of this.
Local authorities say he's wrong, but there are still plenty in the protest movement who are convinced Brown had his hands up. But few have read the nearly 100-page report. We did. Here's what the witnesses closest to the incident who spoke to federal investigators and the grand jury say. Witness 102, a biracial male, for sure that Brown's hands were not above his head. Witness 103, a black male, reluctant to meet with FBI agents, stating snitches get stitches, eventually did talk. He had one of the best views of the shooting and says he did not see Brown's hands up and witnessed Brown moving fast towards Wilson. Witness 104, a biracial female with a clear view of the scene, says she heard the shots fired inside Wilson's car that hit Brown in the hand. She then saw Wilson hop out of the car and yell, "Stop, stop, stop." Brown ran, then turned around, and for a second began to raise his hands as though he considered surrendering, but then quickly balled up his fist and charged at Wilson.
Now, I can guarantee you that most of the people walking around with their hands in the air at these protests saying hands up, don't shoot, don't know any of this because they haven't been told this by the biased media. And if you try to tell them, like we're doing on this podcast, this is a great podcast for you to share with some of your left-wing friends out there to help get them straight because, even though I'm not on the left, I'd get mad at people lying at me. I mean, you gotta get mad at people lying at you. And speaking of lies, a lot of the people who testified later admitted that they had lied about the hands up, don't shoot. Check this out.
More than 2 weeks after a St. Louis County grand jury did not indict Officer Darren Wilson in the killing of Michael Brown, new revelations about the evidence that drove their decision. Witnesses admitted to lying.
Some witnesses admitted they didn't actually see the shooting or only saw a part of the shooting or only repeating what they had heard on the street.
Others changed their story. The grand jury had to figure out who and what to believe.
This is demonstrating to the citizens what people in the justice system have known for a long time, that eyewitness testimony that data is increasingly showing is inherently at best unreliable. At worst, it's completely unreliable.
Thousands of pages of documents made public turn up several examples of testimony with little to no credibility. Witness 22, whose testimony was at first damaging to Officer Wilson, admitted she lied when pressed by investigators, eventually telling the grand jury, quote, "I just felt like I want to be part of something. I didn't see what I told the FBI."
And I'll tell you, at this mob mentality, these lies and get the police officer, whatever, a lot of it is, in my opinion, anti-white racism. I think these white officers are being prejudged because they are white and they are male, and white males are being demonized across the board by powerful left-wing influence in this country. They control commercials, they control movies, they control newscast and news reporting, and it's all taking place. It's not happening in a vacuum. But let's fast forward. That's old school about the hands up, don't shoot. Let's move ahead. Let's move right up to one I just saw. Everybody has probably up there listening has probably seen the video of Daunte Wright being killed by a female officer not far from Minneapolis, and that was heartbreaking too. Nobody, everybody regrets that. Nobody wanted that. The police there didn't want that to happen. The lady officer, Kimberly, what's her name? She didn't want that to happen. Nobody wanted that to happen. And of course, we want justice for the officers and the victims' families and all that to take place. But if you read the newspaper stories these days, you know that you've got to learn how to read between the lines because they don't tell you the truth. But here on Fox News, one of the things I saw in many articles they kept saying over and over and over again was that Daunte Wright was being arrested. At first, they tried to make it sound like he was being arrested of an air freshener law. And everybody was like, oh, that's stupid, crazy. Can't believe this poor kid lost his life because he had an air freshener in a car. Well, that was completely false. They were arresting him because his inspection and his registration and tags and stuff with the car were out. And then they ran him and they found that he was wanted for a warrant. There was a warrant out for his arrest. And so I read article after article that it was a warrant. There was a warrant, but they didn't tell you what it was. And some articles said it was a misdemeanor warrant. They didn't tell you what it was. Well, this changes a lot of things because this goes to the perceptions of the police officers who are trying to arrest Daunte Wright, who's jumping back in the car, which the car can become a lethal weapon. But check this out. This is from Fox News. And again, I will post all links. Don't forget to like and subscribe, please. Daunte Wright, the 20-year-old black man shot by police officers in Minneapolis suburbs Sunday afternoon, had an open warrant for his arrest related to an aggravated armed robbery attempt when he was killed, according to court records. Wright and another man identified as Maurice Driver, a high school acquaintance, had both been charged with first-degree aggravated robbery in a December 2019 incident in Ocesso, Minnesota, according to documents. According to the documents, Wright and Driver went to a party at an apartment, and at that party, this was 5 miles from the Brooklyn Center where Wright was later shot. And basically, he was trying to leave, and they tried to rob this woman to get $820 in cash. And one of them choked her, and they had a gun, and they pulled a black handgun with a silver trim out from their waistband and pocket and pointed it at a woman and demanded money. So this warrant was for a violent accusation of a violent crime. Now, granted, it was a warrant, hadn't been through the police systems yet, but this whole air freshener thing is the latest bogus riot potential causing, bad situation that the media is creating. It's the media that's causing the riots. It's the media that's causing a lot of the bloodshed and the looting and the burning because their unfair and highly biased reporting on these stories. And you have to dig in deeper. Now, I'm going to give everybody a quick resource here that I find helpful. It's called fakehatecrimes.org, and it's a data collection website here. It's nothing fancy. It takes a little while to load, but you can go to fakehatecrimes.org. And I don't know the people behind this, and I'm not speaking, for them, but they are keeping a collection of how many times the American public is being lied to about this. And one of the things I did was, as soon as the Jussie Smollett case came out, I called it right away. I was one of the first people in America to say, this doesn't add up. This does not compute. I bet this is going to be number 400 or 300 and something at fakehatecrimes.org. And it ended up being correct. And check out the latest fake hate crime narrative, number 415 at fakehatecrimes.org. The narrative of mainstream media is that a white man harassed a black man and assaulted him out of racism in Columbia, South Carolina. And the white man who has been arrested and charged, I think, with assault is Jonathan Pentland. Okay. Now let's see if we can get a better picture here of Jonathan Pentland. I've got one of his stories because I know that a lot of you have probably seen the video of that where Pentland is here he is. He's telling this black man here on the sidewalk that he needs to get out. And Pentland apparently is a veteran and sergeant and served the U.S. military. And hopefully you can see him on your screen here. Let me make sure that you folks at home can see turning into a riot again. It's the media that's telling lies and biased stories that could end up all of us having to watch our cities burn. So we're all on riot watch this week. I hope everybody will stay safe, prepare, stay tuned in, stay off the roads for a little bit maybe until we figure out what's going to happen and what the type of potential nationwide violent reactions from people who have a misunderstanding about what's happening with the trial could happen under the new landscape of with all of the police officers that we've lost who've chosen to quit, early retirement, move to other places since the last time. I appreciate everybody listening to our fledgling Dystopia Media podcast. If you haven't joined us on our Facebook page for Dystopia Media, please do so. If you can find our YouTube channel and like and subscribe and back us up on YouTube, we're also on Twitch. We're on Twitter. We're on Rumble. Check us out on Rumble. We appreciate any and all support. And if you do think this is important information that people should consider or share, please share this around by email and social media. This is Dystopia Media signing off. We'll see you next time.